It took a week and a half, but the House of Representatives was officially called for the Republican Party yesterday. So after any election, it's always wise for a party to assess its performance. What went well? Where can improvements be made? What were the winning messages? Well, joining me now to talk about this and more is Ronna McDaniel. She is the chair of the Republican National Committee. Ronna, welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me, Tony.
So finally, it took a while, but the race was called, and the Republicans now have enough seats to claim control, the majority, in the 118th Congress. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, we finally have enough seats. There are still seats that we don't have the results for in California and Colorado, but we did retire Nancy Pelosi, and she actually just said today she's not going to seek leadership. This is the outcome we intended, and we now have a check on Joe Biden in the House of Representatives, and you're already seeing them get to work with this investigation of President Biden and some of the financial interests he had with his son that compromised, it looks like, his interests in and maybe our country that we need to get to the bottom of. So this is great. It's great news, and we took back the House.
Ronna, I've been saying since election night when we saw these results that we are a divided nation. We're clearly divided. When you look at these races, and what that means in part is that every vote counts. I mean, some of these races, as you said, are still being counted. We've just gotten enough seats to, the Republicans have gotten enough seats to take the majority in the House, but there's still races that are outstanding. And many of them are just being decided by a handful of votes. What were some of the difference makers in these close races?
Well, Tony, you hit on it. You know, after 2020, we saw a shift in how people voted. And Democrats became more mail-in and early voting and ballot harvesting. And Republicans really wanted to only vote on Election Day. And that's an issue, because if they have a month to harvest votes and we say, oh, we want to hold everything to Election Day, it makes it harder for operatives to go turn out the vote on Election Day. So in states like California, where they've had ballot harvesting and the Republican Party has trained voters, yes, we do have to ballot harvest. We have to compete with the Democrats. The only way we can is if we're doing this day in and day out for the whole time they are, we can win. And that's where you see a big win like Mike Garcia in a Dem district, right? I mean, you see a big win like Young Kim and Michelle Steele and maybe Duarte. So we have to be doing these things long term, but we do have people in our party still saying, oh, don't vote any other day but Election Day. And we've got to get past that mindset because Democrats are getting a big head start.
Well, we've seen it because we were helping some of the churches in California that going back to 2018 and then into 2020, doing the ballot harvesting. And so churches, they don't use ballot harvesting, they do ballot collecting. Just as they would the offering, because it's a sacred trust that we have as Americans, and it's done all within the confines of the law. But as you point out, that made a significant difference in California, New York. There's about 13 states that allow, someone other than a designated person related to the person casting the ballot to collect it. So is this a strategy you think Republicans will use going forward?
Well, I'm against ballot harvesting as a person. I think chain of custody is critical, but in the states where that's the law, we have to do it too, where the Democrats are. So Montana, we do it very well. Oregon, some other states. I'm not a lawmaker. I'd say state lawmakers should have voter ID, get rid of ballot harvesting, and try and condense the election period. We should probably vote on one day, election day, not have an election month. But where they have it, we have to do it, and we've got to get good at it.
I think the best way to get the election back, as you pointed out, I agree with you 100%. We ought to have an election day, not election month. We should have people casting their ballots. If they have a legitimate reason that they can't get to the poll, make accommodations for that. But the best way to get there is use the rules that many of the Democrats have set up, because if you get better at it than they are, they'll want to get rid of it.
Exactly. And that's what happened in California. Tony, you're exactly right. In 2018, we lost all these House races. All the results were trickling in. Young Kim lost 3 weeks after the election, right? This year, it's different. And why is that? We're actually picking up seats as the vote totals go on because we figured it out. And we have to do that. And you're right. The Democrats are probably going to throw that out and find some new law. But we have to use the laws on the books. We have to use it like they are. And I do think we've got to get away from only vote on election day, don't vote early. I was telling people go vote early in person, vote absentee,
Right.
and then sign up to be a poll watcher.
Right.
We need everybody to do everything.
I did the same thing. I voted early and encouraged people to do so. So, number one, that they're free to vote, are free to engage in the process by being a poll watcher on election day. And you never know what could happen that might prevent you from voting. Ronna, we're up against a break. Can you stick around for 2 minutes? Because on the other side of the break, I'd really like to ask you about messaging. What were the winning messages in this election? Because I think some people will be surprised. Those that were well at messaging on some of these issues that have long been central to the Republican Party did quite well. By the way, I just want to commend you on the work on encouraging and promoting poll watching, which really brought back a sense of confidence into the election as people had a greater sense that their ballot was going to be secure and it was going to be counted. That combined with what we saw in about 24 states with voter reform efforts, I think really helped keep the turnout up.
Oh, thank you, Tony. I think it was critical that this is the first time the RNC has been able to do this in 40 years. So we actually had poll workers and poll watchers that we've recruited. And again, that helps people feel comfortable voting early because they know we have people at the absentee counting voting centers watching their ballots. And this is part of people feeling safe and that the election's fair and transparent. So we want to continue this. This is going to be a critical role for the RNC going forward.
I think it was huge. Let's talk a little bit about messaging, because there were some that said, and I'm going to jump right into it, some said that in the post-Dobbs world, where all of a sudden Republicans were forced to talk about abortion, that was a liability for Republicans, and no question about it. I think it did fuel the younger vote, the 18 to 24 vote. That combined with the president pledging to eradicate their student debt, that fueled them to turn out. But Republicans who understood this message of life were really able to use that, I think, to their benefit. And let me rephrase that. I don't mean to say they were using it, but they were able to take it, and it was not a negative for them. It was a positive because they articulated a pro-life position.
Yeah, so we've been a pro-life party for a long time, and then suddenly we get the overturn of Roe v. Wade and returning it back to the states, but we didn't have that muscle memory to talk about why we're pro-life. And then you had Democrats putting millions and millions of dollars basically in lies and scare tactics, trying to make this the big issue. And I think candidates who stuck their head in the sand and didn't address the issue at all, it didn't do good for them. But candidates who said, yeah, I'm pro-life, I'm proud to be pro-life. But look at the Democrats. Therefore, due date, gender selected abortions. They're fine if your daughter or my daughter doesn't exist just because she's a girl or a young woman. That's where you put them on the defensive, that they have no limits. And then you talk about other issues as well. And candidates who were able to put the Democrats on the defensive did well, but Democrats were going to make it an issue no matter what. And it wasn't something that we could ignore. And it was a great opportunity to talk about being pro-life and how proud we are of that.
You know, speaking of the party platform, I was just talking about this a moment ago. We had 12 Republican senators voted yesterday to move forward on the misnamed Respect for Marriage Act, which directly contradicts the Republican Party's official platform. I know that the court in Obergefell redefined marriage, but the party platform's been pretty clear on this.
Yeah, I haven't seen all the legislation, but it's concerning to me too on the religious liberty front. But I've heard from some other legislators who are deeply concerned that in the name of doing a couple other things that weren't really urgent, we might be stripping away religious liberties. And that's really frightening, that these protections were not ingrained in this bill and really will weaken and erode religious freedom. So I think we need to be on the lookout for that. I don't know if there's anything that can be done. I think it's in the House today, and then we'll go back to the Senate.
Senator Mike Lee is still working on trying to get his colleagues to support a real amendment to the bill that would protect those religious liberties, as you talked about, and he's been a stalwart on religious liberty. But it not only is a religious liberty, it also is an attack on parental rights, which, by the way, is an area that we saw great success in this election as parents got involved trying to protect their children from indoctrination. Ron, I want to thank you. You've been very generous with your time. Always great to see you. And again, just want to commend you for your leadership at the RNC.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me.